Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the first technical session of our Contact Center for Microsoft Teams webinar series. My name is Patricia Merchant, and I form part of the marketing team here at Enghouse Interactive, and I am going to be your moderator for today's session. Our first session today is going to be how does an Enghouse Contact Center with Microsoft Teams work, which is being hosted by Dave McDowell, who you see on the screen just there in the middle. And Peter, who is on the right there, Peter Fedup, who's also a technical consultant here at Enghouse Interactive. We have 3 webinar series. I think most of you are probably aware of that right now because you would have seen the emails. But just to let you know, so today's session, how does an Enghouse Contact Center with Microsoft Teams work? Our second session is taking place on the 6th of May at 11 o'clock, who's going to be led by Peter and supported by Dave, and that's factors to consider when migrating your contact center to Microsoft Teams. And on the 10th of June, our session is going to start a little bit earlier, so at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's allowing basically time for Anna Stokes, who's joining us from sunny New Zealand, and she's the Director of Global Product. And that session is going to be the future of an omnichannel contact center with Microsoft Teams. We are hoping today is going to be an interactive session, so that's where you guys come in today. So please provide your questions via the GoToWebinar panel. We are going to be scanning those questions, and then we're going to unmute your mic, so you're going to have the opportunity to ask Dave or Peter your questions. But if you're feeling a little bit shy to go on the mic, don't worry, just put your question, let us know that you don't want to go on the mic, and we'll just provide that question ourselves to the panel. Finally, just so you're aware, this session is being recorded, and we're going to make the recording available to you in the next couple of days to watch at your own leisure. So with that, I'll hand over straight to Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Trish. Okay, morning, everybody. So to get straight on with the material, so I'm going to be talking about Communication Center and how it works with Microsoft Teams. So Enghouse as an organisation has had a long history with Microsoft, going back to the OCS days, then on to Link, Skype for Business, and now Teams. And this is across the product portfolio, not just the contact center, but call recording, call logging, etc. So we've been working with Microsoft over 12 years as a co-development partner. We're a gold partner, but we're also part of the TAP program, early doors on software, APIs, etc., to build new integrations and to leverage the best that's available from Microsoft and Enghouse. So we've presented alongside Microsoft for a number of years at their Inspire and Ignite conferences. And I'm sort of really pleased to announce that as of today, it was late last night in the US, we have finally finished all the hurdles to have Communications Center certified on Microsoft Teams. So, I'm going to go through what that means in terms of how we connect to Microsoft Teams, but that's the official stamp will be there on the Microsoft website in the next couple of weeks. It takes sort of 2 to 3 weeks to get promoted onto their webpage. We passed the testing some time ago. It's been sort of red tape bureaucracy since. And across our portfolio, you'll see a whole raft of our products passing this process in the coming weeks. Last week, Trio, our contact center in the Nordics region, passed certification, and our cloud CCSP platform, it will be completed this week. And then our Voxtron platform that is in the Benelux region is due to complete in a couple of weeks. So you'll see a whole tranche of our products passing that certification. As I say, Communication Center is now a certified solution for Microsoft Teams. So what does this Teams journey look like, or where does it start? And that really starts for the majority of users nowadays in the direct routing model. So an introduction of an SBC that's taking PSTN traffic, but then having a direct routing relationship with Microsoft phone system in Microsoft 365 Cloud. So calls will come in from the PSTN to a session border controller. They're routed via direct routing up into the Microsoft Cloud for then delivery to either agents or office workers, back office workers, whether they're in the office or they're remote. it will then be delivering from the Microsoft Cloud to their Teams endpoint to handle calls. So that is the sort of migration that's going on. People are moving to that, but the Teams infrastructure and ecosystem itself doesn't offer the whole solution. So there are a couple of gaps, or a number of gaps in there. Things like contact center routing, reporting, skills-based routing, omnichannel, etc., are not part of that Teams infrastructure natively. Things like operator consoles, reception consoles aren't a native part of Teams itself. Call recording and quality management and call accounting software. These are all extras that need to be bolted on and added to that world. And that's where organizations like Enghouse come in terms of providing the whole solution stack to allow Microsoft Teams to be a solution for an entire business and not just back office users. So Microsoft introduced a certification program that has now been sort of much more clearly defined about what the levels of certification available are and what these mean, and you can get signed off against. So the first level, and these sort of texty based slides here, I'm not going to read out everything on them. They come from the Microsoft site that's referenced here, Teams Contact Center, and it's the criteria under which you achieve certification to Microsoft for these particular things. So the first level is called a Connect integration. And this is the sort of most basic level of certification you can get against a Microsoft for a contact center. And the important thing about this is that it uses SIP connectivity from the SBC that's doing the direct routing. It has another route out to route calls to a contact center. The contact center at that point has to have some sort of connection back into Teams for presence, but delivery of calls doesn't have to necessarily be through Teams. It could be directly to a third-party telephony endpoint, SIP or WebRTC client that the agents are using. So although it uses Teams presence and it also has, it must deliver calls when they're doing a transfer to Teams destinations, the agents themselves aren't necessarily users of Teams for the phone calls they're handling in the contact center. So as I say, that's the sort of basic level. The next level is Connect and Extend. And this is where we're currently certified. So we have a Connect and Extend integration with Communication Center. And the whole thing about this is it needs a more native integration into Microsoft to achieve this level of certification. So in this case, what the expected features are is, yes, you have SIP connectivity for the contact center application, and also that you have awareness of Teams or embedded with Teams, so you need at least Teams presence. But the big crucial one here is that the agent call must be delivered on Teams itself. So the agent must receive the call in their Teams client. And this is what I'll go on to show you with Communication Center. This is what we do. We basically have a call that's placed to us. We queue, we treat the call, but when we place the call to an agent, connect an agent to the call, we're actually passing it back via the SBC up the direct routing for delivery to their Teams client. At the same time, we're utilizing native elements of the Graph APIs, the first one being the Teams presence. So in the contact center, we will show the Teams presence and make that useful to the agents in the contact center. But it doesn't just stop there. It also means about using other Graph APIs as part of the solution. And these are things like the Azure Graph API for AD. So we can synchronize against Azure AD now as a part of the contact center management and configuration. It also means extending that to things like call recording. So QMS, I'm not here talking about QMS specifically today, but QMS as part of the solution stack now also supports the Graph API for call recording directly from Microsoft Teams. So this allows us now to, as part of the overall stack, to record internal calls within Microsoft, not just the SBC generated calls that we would have previously been able to do with just a Connect integration. Moving on from there, this also includes additions and changes to email handling. So if in the omni-channel world, if we're doing email routing in Communication Center, we can now use the Graph API for Office 365 email rather than POP3 SMTP methods, which will be deprecated by Microsoft in October 2021 anyway. So it's all part of this connect and extend integration where we're utilizing the APIs available in Office 365. And then the final one really on that of interest is in the sort of call accounting. So our Proteus software is to consume via the Graph APIs the CDR records, so details of all the back office interactions on Teams, things like presence and conferencing, etc. So about the ability to sort of provide call accounting across the whole estate through this connect and extend suite of applications. On the client side, to certify for connect and extend, as I said, you always must deliver the voice call to the Microsoft Teams client. That's the primary endpoint, and that's the key factor for this. Moving forward, it's also they expected that call control should be available, just not hold a conference and blind transfer, but we can do everything with the call control. And also that you should be moving towards an embedded contact center application for Teams. It's not a requirement that it's fully embedded today, but that needs to be the direction of travel. And that's what we've shown to Microsoft in terms of our certification, that they accept all of those points. Moving forward, there's the extend and power integration, and this is what some people would call the pure native integration to Microsoft Teams. And this will be the subject of the third session in this series, where Anna will take us through the futures and of where exactly we're going on the Microsoft integrations. And the difference here is that it's the removal of a SIP trunk integration via the SBC and using the calling API for controlling calls within Microsoft Teams. That would allow integration of Microsoft calling plans and not just direct routing. And also it requires, from our side to be able to do things like streaming the announcements and on hold music directly into the cloud platform. Now, actually, we can build such a beast today, but we don't believe it can offer the full maturity of requirements around a contact center yet. So as I say, Anna will be covering this off very much in the third session about the futures and how that will work. And as part of that, it's about using other APIs within there, things like the cognitive services APIs, so we can start interacting with the speech that's happening in the platform, things like speech to text, analytics, etc. on a call, popping articles to agents as they go through, and things like integrating video, emotionality recognition, face-to-face customer service, etc. And there's a whole host of interesting things and exciting things that will be coming when we do that. And as part of that, that's where you'll see the full omni-channel experience being exposed and surfaced within the Teams client natively. So I won't steal any thunder of Anna's in a couple of weeks on that. So that now brings us back to Communication Center and Teams. What does that look like today with the Connect and Extend integration? So as I said, with the direct routing model, you've got calls that come in from a PSTN for external into an SBC. The session border controller has a direct routing relationship with Microsoft 365 and the phone system. It routes calls to phone system, and they are delivered to back office Teams users and potentially to agents who are homed on Microsoft Teams. So where does the contact center fit into this architecture? How does that work? Well, first of all, when a call comes in, the SBC says, where's this call destined for? Is it for the contact center, or where should it go? And the first use case might be, well, it's actually for our legacy destination. So in the migration stage, that might mean it goes down to a Skype for Business server and a legacy Mitel via Cisco, etc. Another use case will be the call is a direct call for a back office user. So it's a DDI call to a particular number, in which case it will go straight up the Teams direct routing and deliver to a back office user. Now, we do come into play there with our QMS, our quality management suite, with call recording. We could at that point be recording calls in two different ways, a choice of. We could be using SIPREC from the session border controller to record the audio of the call, Or we could be using the native recording APIs in Microsoft Teams. We have a Teams connector that talks across the graph APIs to 365, and we could be capturing the audio there. So two choices really on how we do audio capture. The reason you would go for the direct API in some circumstances is because it will also record internal calls, user to user, internal within Teams, whereas that wouldn't be traversing the SBC. The use case I'm more interested in, however, is when the call is destined for the contact center or the operator console for that matter. In that case, when the SBC sees it's a number that routes to the contact center, it will push the call over a SIP trunk to the communication center server. The communication center server now has a SIP stack. It's a free switch implementation that effectively spins up conferences to handle calls as they come in. So we place the call into a conference where we treat and queue the call. So by treating and queuing, I mean play the in-queue messages, the welcome messages, the escalation messages, the auto-attendant positioning queue, etc. We might do any enhanced routing, database lookups, etc. But remember, communication centers doing this for all of the medias, not just voice. It's doing for the emails, for the web chats, for SMSs, and it's evaluating where it should be placing those calls, which agents should it be allocating that call to. To aid in this, the communication center at this point has information. It knows about the agents. It knows what all the agents are doing, what interactions they're currently handling, what contact center calls, emails, web chats they're currently on. But it also has a Teams presence connection. So again, through the Graph API, we're looking at the presence of users in Teams, the back office, but also more importantly at this stage, the agents. So we know whether the agent is on a contact center interaction, but presence knows whether they're on a back office interaction. So are they on a direct call that's got nothing to do with the contact center? We know from the Teams presence connection whether they are or aren't. So at that point, we make an evaluation to decide which agent to deliver the call to. And when we deliver the call to an agent, what we're doing is establishing another call leg out across to the SBC, up the direct routing, and delivering that to the agent's Teams endpoint. So this is meeting the connect and extend integration requirement that we handle the calls natively within Teams. Obviously, at the same time, we're passing call information to Touchpoint, the agent client, but also call control. So from within Touchpoint, you can control this conference now. So this is where you can put the caller on hold. You can make transfer, blind and consultative transfer decisions, etc. You have ultimate control over that call. So that's where the call will sit until its termination. If the agent wants to do a supervised transfer or consultative transfer, what they're effectively doing is they're using Teams presence, first of all, to see the presence of their destination. It might be the contact center agent, in which case they'll have contact centers presence as well. But Touchpoint exposes both presence, all the information amalgamated together. And then if they want to join a third party to that call for a console or even to promote to a conference, that other party is invited to the same conference, and we manipulate the voice paths within the conference. And if we want to then complete the transfer, the original agent would drop out of that conference. So that's the sort of under the hood architecture of what's going on, how we talk to this. I can see just as we're going along, there's come question about what SBCs we're routing. Basically, any SBC that is certified for direct routing with Microsoft. We're completely agnostic in terms of that. We're not supplying the session border controller, but we're sitting off the back of any SBC that is certified for Microsoft direct routing. But maybe we can come to that in more detail later on when we get to the questions section of the session. So in a nutshell, that's the sort of architecture that's sitting behind there. I'm going to do you a quick demo now of what that looks like in the real world. So from a Touchpoint perspective, nothing really has changed. You know, it looks the same. So if you're coming from Skype for Business, from Cisco, from Avaya on Communication Center, it's the same look and feel. You've got the same attributes, you've got the same configuration, etc. The big difference here, though, is that my endpoint is now Teams. So if I was on Skype, it would have been obviously my Skype client, but from now on, it will be my Teams client. That's where calls are actually being delivered to. I've got the same capabilities to log in, log out, take breaks, do my settings, etc. As I say, nothing has changed in that regard. So I'm going to put a call in. There is a slight change in terms of how the agent answers the call, however. And this is to do with the sort of state of APIs with Microsoft. So I'm going to place a call that will present to the agent. The call is presenting, it's presented the touch point, but it's also presented a Teams pop-up. And the Teams pop-up is where I need to answer the call. So I answered the call on the Teams client, but we've passed control immediately to Touchpoint. The reason we are doing that is that there is no client-side API on Teams yet. So we're not able to answer the call on behalf of Teams. We have to answer it in Teams and then pass control over, which, as you saw, happened automatically. Now, I've got manual answer on there, so I did have to click on the Teams client. We can support auto answer, in which case what we're doing is Touchpoint is emulating the keyboard shortcuts, the global shortcuts to answer a Teams call, which is Control-Shift-S. Until there's if Microsoft release an API for that, obviously we will do that programmatically. But until then, auto answer is on the Control-Shift-S being emulated for us by Touchpoint. So I've answered the call, I'm in the call, just as a normal user would have been. The only difference was on that manual answer, I clicked on the Touchpoint client. Once I'm in the call, I deal with the call as normal. If I want to make a call transfer, I come to the call bar as previously. I can search the directory. I can look at my transfer groups that I may have defined. But you'll see here, we've got presence showing. And this is the Teams presence that's feeding through from the back. As well as with agents, I can see their contact center presence. So no change in terms of this functionality. I will come in, I will do transfer to, I demo Pete there. I'm establishing a transfer. I have the transfer parties. The original caller is on hold, and it's ringing on the other destination. If they don't answer, not a problem. I could, if I want to turn it into a blind transfer, I can complete the transfer, I can cancel. So there's nothing different here in terms of what happened previously on other PBX solutions. So the sort of learning scale for the learning path for an agent is absolutely minimal. I will complete that call, I will wrap up, just as I always did, and I'm done. And I'm ready for the next call. I'm actually in a work time here, so let me finish my work time. Similarly, if I want to make an outbound call, I want to establish the outbound call through the contact center. So we want the agents to use Touchpoint. So they use Touchpoint for all of their telephony in the contact center. So here I could now I could look up someone to make a call. Or I could just, type a telephone number in and make that call. And what's actually happening here is it's establishing a conference on the EICC server, and then it invited me into their conference. And then it's making an outbound call from that conference to the destination. I'm now connected to there. I can end the call, hold it, etc. in here. As required, I can still open the call handler if I wish in Touchpoint, but that's how I establish that outbound call. I've still got all the capabilities now, even with that outbound call. I could be transferring that outbound call to other people in the contact center or back office, because we've established the call through the conference and we have ultimate call control over that. So, as I say, most things there haven't changed from what you would have experienced previously on Communication Center. The one subtle difference being how we answer calls. What is interesting though, and this is in terms of where's my Teams client? Sorry, is obviously the other side of that I said was moving into an embedded client within Teams itself as well. So I have down the left-hand side here is an application loaded in Teams called Touchpoint. So this is a web version of Touchpoint. It is not, it's not a fully featured agent client yet. It's not omni-channel, it's voice only, but it's to show you the direction of travel. And this is where Anna's going to be picking up in her session about our plans, both around that sort of native calling API integration and also the embedded Teams client. So at the moment where we're at with this embedded Teams client, I can see the status of the queues. So I can see what state they're in. I can actually look at the agents. I can see who's logged in, what medias they're logged into. I'd be able to see any activity they're on, their break, work time status. I'll get alarms, if they've exceeded break times, etc. within here. Also, from an agent perspective, I have the ability directly from Teams to go on breaks. So I could choose my break type, for example, and push myself onto a break here. I could finish my break, do the same with work times. I can log myself off. And there's some basic call control functionalities in here as well. So if I answer the call on Teams client, I can actually put a call on hold and hang up from this client. But we haven't implemented yet the full features that would be required to use this in anger as an agent client. But it's a good idea of the direction of travel. The other thing, obviously, with Teams is we can start embedded web pages in here as well. So, for example, I've started putting things like snapshot screens into the Teams experience. And over time, we will be packaging all of these up as Teams applications as well in the same way. But you've always been able to do this in Teams, to be honest, because it's just loading a web page within the Teams environment. So in terms of demonstration, that was just a quick view of exactly what it looks like now, how we handle calls within the Teams environment, and just a sort of taster of the direction of travel in terms of those embedded in Teams. So at which point, let's go back to, I'll just hand back to Trish briefly before we get into the questions.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, just wanted to highlight a couple of bits, really. One is this one. We're having a roundtable discussion on the 25th of March. It's starting at 10 o'clock. We have a fantastic lineup. We have Angela McKenna from Salesforce, Mohammed Arif from Microsoft, Dr. Sue Zaman Rashid from Chartered Institute of Economics and Human Factors, Anthony Phillips, welcome, Yvonne Hart from Ascensos, and our VP of Marketing from Enghouse Interactive, Jeremy Payne. Look out for the email tomorrow for the invitation. You will receive your link to register for this webinar. And then finally, the other thing I just wanted to show you is we do have Microsoft Teams dedicated website. I'll send the link as well in the follow-up email. But we're also offering a tele demonstration. So if what you saw today isn't quite enough and you want to just book one with us, we can sort that out for you. And also just to let you know that we're also offering a 30-day trial of our communication center product at the moment. So let us know if you're interested in any of that. My email is just there, patricia.merchant@enghouse.com, if you want to email me directly or any of our panelists. Okay, let's open up the discussion. Peter, if you want to get yourself back on video, we can just start asking some of the questions that we've got here.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, could I just say I can't see the questions? I don't know if that's something you need to set up for me.
That's okay, Dave. I think what we'll do, Peter can see them all.
Right, cool.
You're going to be blind. Peter's just going to hand them over to you.
Yeah, sure. I might use a demo dummy, Dave, at some point just to cover off a couple of the questions. But the first one, obviously, you covered off during the session, which is what are the SBCs that we're using. And there are a number of SBCs that are out in the marketplace and different providers around there. But what you really should be looking at is into the chat. I've sent the answer out there just so that you can get connected into the website. Is really about going on to the approved devices from Microsoft. So the same way that we have to be certified from the contact center perspective, all the SBC providers will also be certifying as well. Therefore, if you have a look through that list there, those SBCs will come in different sizing from different vendors that are there. But there are a few key things that we need to do. So I'm going to jump a couple of questions down because we did have an interesting question around what SBCs would we use in conjunction with the call recording. You know, are every device is supported? The key thing, if you're going to do with your recording methods, there are two different recording methods that you could utilize, either using the Teams recording API within Azure. So if we dropped the QMS server or an element of it into Azure to tap those recordings directly within the cloud, there's no real reason to tap the voice from the SBC because you'll get everything, all the calls from the cloud directly. But for any reason that you do need to, if you want to tap that voice conversation from your SBC, the important thing is to understand that what you're looking for there is that the SBC supports SIPREC. And basically, the SIPREC protocol really means that the SBC faults the audio to the call recorder, so that it's passing the call recording or the conversation to the agent still or the back office user at that point in time, whoever's having that conversation, but it also sends a copy to the call recorder at the same time in real time. With the different sizes around those SBCs, some of the more smaller ones there, sort of, you know, the 1000, 2000 range, say from audio codes, for example, some of those and older versions of firmware may not actually support that SIPREC protocol. So it's quite important that if you want to use that as your recording method, that you ensure the SBC also has that SIPREC method in place. So I'll send the response out to that question there just as a recap for everybody. But that's really sort of some of the nuances around that SBC. So you're looking at the Microsoft supported devices. If you're not going to use the native caller recording and want to do something via SBCs, then realistically you just need to look for that SIPREC as a tick box on the supported features for them. One of the other questions that we have in there as well is around the sort of support for Teams clients and contact center applications for the sort of non-Microsoft OS and also the web version within there. As Dave's sort of shown you within there, a lot of the vendors in the contact center marketplace are starting to embed applications within there. It's just not a perfect world yet. There's certain sort of limitations that we're working to under there. For example, if we have our Teams client closed at the moment, we couldn't pop or force an alert to a supervisor, perhaps if there's too many calls in the queue or calls waiting. So there's still a little bit of work going on behind the scenes with Microsoft to make some improvement around those applications. So it's nice to see that they're evolving into the market there. But quite a lot of our customers have chosen the full depth of it using the touch point today. But that will certainly be evolving, and Anna will sort of close out where those sort of applications are heading as a part of session 3 within there as well. So I'll just push that answer across into the chat as well for anyone that needs to have a little read through that detail. So one of the other questions, Dave, if you could pull the touch point up for us as well, just one of the questions was around sending DTMF and can the agent send the DTMF or do they need to use the Teams client to do that? So that's actually available within, you could do it from either the Teams client, but we do actually have a toolbar for sending DTMF from within the touchpoint client. So I don't know if you want to just run us through that one quickly, Dave.
Okay, I'll just set up a call because it's better when the set up a call first of all. And one of the options I showed you here, sorry, I'm just answering the call the other way. I'm not very good at multitasking. One of the options on the call bar here is to actually open up a DTMF panel. So, you know, this is a keyboard input as part of the call, as well as the.
We can't see what you're sharing, Dave, by the way.
Sorry, there we go. Sorry, it was frozen. Right, sorry. So I've established a call in the contact center. I'm handling a call, but one of the options down on the call bar here is to pop out the touch point keypad, and that is how I can inject DTMF into the call when handling the call.
So we have, thanks Dave, we have another question around the embedded team client, and when you're navigating away from the embedded team client and moving between different windows in Teams, does it maintain state or reload it? This page is a web page. As you're moving sort of backwards and forwards between there, it does actually do a refresh at that point in time. And that's sort of one of the things that we have sort of picked up with Microsoft to keep it reloaded into the background that's there. But as you're clicking away from that and moving perhaps to your chat or into your calls bar, as you move back to the touch point, as it is a web page, the Teams client does actually reload that session that's there. So there are a few things around that. Sorry, Dave.
I was just going to add to that, Pete. One of the reasons that we've not implemented the full omni-channel in here at the moment is for that very reason, is because of maintaining the state. With the phone call, it's not so critical because actually the phone call is already happening in the voice channel. But if in the omni-channel place, that's where it becomes a problem. Sorry.
No problem. So that seems to be all of the questions that we picked up during the chat during the session. I don't know if there's anyone that wants to unmute and perhaps quiz me and Dave around anything else that they had on their mind from Dave's session today.
Yeah, if you do have a question, just if you can put your hand up. If not, we are done for today. I think we've got all questions so far. I think everyone's been a bit shy. All right, that's fantastic. Thank you, guys. I think we call it a day there. We're quite early, so everyone's getting kind of 20 minutes back from our session. So thank you very much. Thank you to Dave. Thanks, Peter, for this session today. Don't forget that we have another session coming up, which I'll send you a reminder via email anyway. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.